Hello, DECA members. My name is Sarah Sunny, and I am your Texas DECA District 7 president. And welcome to episode 12 of Spotlights with Sarah. So I feel like this next guest needs no introduction, but I will let her introduce herself. So if you could just talk about your name, how many years you've been in DECA, and your officer position, and we'll get right on started.
Absolutely. Episode 12. That's impressive in and of itself that this is the 12th interview. My name is Hadley Brown, and I am serving as the Southern Region Vice President. I have the honor of serving on the Executive Officer team. I have been a DECA member for all 4 years of high school. I'm currently a senior. I've competed in everything from professional selling to written events to principles of hospitality and tourism. Through each of those, I have absolutely loved it and loved meeting DECA members such as yourself, Sarah. And I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm very excited for this episode because I do feel that you have so much insight. And I know that for new members, at least when I first joined, I didn't know there was an executive officer team. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I think that's important to kind of know the reach and the levels of what DECA looks like as a first year member. And this series has always been about one, talking about each member's DECA journey and their experience, but also gaining perspective into how you get started. And I know that there have been a lot of new members that's kind of my biggest pride thing with this series, the new members that have seen this and have been like, okay, I'm understanding some things now. And now I have more questions. So I want to contact people. And that always makes me very happy. So we'll get started there. If you want to share basically your DECA journey and maybe mention some struggles that you might have had throughout your DECA experience, but also the highs, the things that made you feel on top of the world.
Oh, absolutely. Anything in life that is worth doing will be a challenge, will be a struggle. It's not meant to be easy, especially when the word leadership is involved. So I started with DECA my freshman year. The student council advisor at my high school was also the chapter advisor for DECA. And so starting in student council, she said, hey, you probably should check this out too, because it focuses more around career readiness. So let's make sure that you're developed in all facets as a person. I was really excited to kick off there. Immediately, she took one look at me. She let me talk to the crowd a couple minutes, and she said, "You're going to compete in hospitality." There is no doubt about it. You don't get an option with that one. So I took it and I ran with it. By the end of my sophomore year, I was really, really invested in leadership. I really enjoyed public speaking. I love challenges. I love having a vision for something and guiding other people to that same vision, especially when you can incorporate all kinds of creativity into it. So after serving as the VP of leadership in my chapter, I then decided that I wanted to take it to that next level and run for an association office. I am from Tennessee, so I ran for Tennessee state president. And after that election, it all skyrocketed from there. Like you mentioned before, knowing that there's an executive officer team from the very beginning isn't always feasible or attainable because that's not the people that you're in direct contact with. You don't always get to see them at your association conference or at your district conferences. They're more of a liaison between the association officers and DECA Inc. When I was a freshman, I will shamelessly admit that every night before I would go to bed, I would open the DECA Inc. website and I would look at the executive officer team. And that year, it was an all male team. They were all boys. And I was like, I want to be where they are. I don't care if I have to be the only girl on the team. I don't care if it's an all girl team. I don't care who's on the team. But I knew that I wanted to make it there, but I wasn't quite sure how. So I followed my passion. And that's the reason that I ended up in the position. But I definitely had my eyes set on it from the very beginning. I would say that the biggest struggle that I had along the way from being a member to a chapter officer to an association officer and then to executive office, I was always my biggest obstacle because I would start to overthink things, or I would start to think that I wasn't good enough for a position or that I couldn't lead adequately enough. And it was when I got in my own head that things started to go a different way than I wanted them to. So the advice from that is to trust yourself as you're going through the process. And anything that you can think of in your wildest imagination, you can make possible, especially when you're in association office. That's how my team in Tennessee flourished. And that team was the reason that we were able to accomplish all that we did, because we let our imaginations run wild. So that's the way to combat the challenges that I faced.
Absolutely. And being your own personal obstacle is something that is something I know all too well, honestly, because when you do have goals, and I think it's important to set those goals from a very young perspective of being a DECA member. Now, obviously, you knew exactly where you wanted to go, that entire end goal of becoming an executive officer. And even if you don't necessarily know that far into the future, say for us, I think it was as a freshman in terms of competition, let's say it was making it to ICD, so you're placing in the top 10. And if you take the steps necessary to go that far, then I think there's no reason that you can't, because it's really about creating the goal, but then the pathway to get to that goal is all steps. And that's the biggest tip that I've learned for every aspect of DECA. And I like to say that DECA kind of has two different aspects to it. There's competition, but then there's leadership, and they kind of go hand in hand at times, but they are sometimes different. And they require different mindsets and different goal paths. But I'd like to say that I've been successful in both venues, but it's the same process for me. It's been setting the goal, making the steps towards it, and sometimes combating myself and telling myself that it's okay if you mess up, as long as you're still trying to get to that next step, you'll be okay. There's going to be obstacles every single step of the way. So absolutely, I think that's an amazing response to that as well. Now, one thing that I thought was really interesting is that Power Trip, you mentioned that you were originally interested in the medical field. So I wanted to actually hear a little bit more about that. It's not on the question list, but I was just really curious about it after I heard it. So if you just want to talk about kind of how that changed as a DECA member, and whether that be going into medicine, but also just for new members, I think that DECA prepares them to understand what they like and what they don't like. So for you, that turned out a different way than it might have for others.
Absolutely. There are a whole lot of jobs out there, and it's really, really easy when you're in elementary school or even middle school, even high school, to latch onto a career field and say, this is what I want to be. And the second that you latch onto it, it's like everything else disappears. And I have no idea why I was so enamored with the idea of being a doctor. And I mean, it's obvious. We watch Grey's Anatomy. We are seeing all of these medical professionals, and they're absolute rock stars. And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be something where I could help other people. And I thought that helping other people could only be in healthcare. But then my freshman year, I mentioned this at Power Trip. It was the day before the second semester freshman year was starting, and I realized that I had no business being a doctor. I have zero ability to handle any kind of like liquids or fluids or touch anybody. I can't do it. I simply can't do it. And there's only one class available that wouldn't completely mess up my schedule, and that was the Intro to Business and Marketing. I've talked about this in every leadership position that I've ever strived towards, and that's marketing is what really fit who I am as a person. I really enjoy being vocal and being extroverted. I love putting glitter on things. I love using Canva. I love having an end goal and looking to take steps to get there. And that vision works really, really well when you're advocating for a goal, or you're in leadership and you're advocating for the people that you represent. So that's where I switched from being able to say, hey, I want to be a rock star in the healthcare profession, to then saying, I can be a rock star wherever I end up, just like you guys. And that's the reason I ended up in DECA.
Right. And I think that's important, because the number one response and that I get is, one, I only have to be able to go into business to be in DECA, or I don't know what I want to do, so why should I be in DECA? And both of those questions are easily answered with the fact that DECA is not for one student. It is for a wide range of students, for every single person who wants to hone in on the ability to serve others. And I think that even from that, if you take the idea of, okay, I want to be extroverted and I want to be able to communicate, but I also want to go into healthcare, and say that is actually what you want to do. Take those skills and utilize it there. Or if you want to go into computer science, same thing. Communication, leadership, interaction exists everywhere. And I think DECA prepares students like no other for that. So I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you have to advocate for yourself in any career that you're going to go into. In
absolutely.
any career, you have to have a resume and you have to have soft skills and you have to be able to speak for yourself. And marketing is a way to learn how to speak for yourself. And if that means advocating for your patients or your clients or your business owners or whomever you're advocating for, that's what marketing helps. Any career field can start with DECA.
You're
Absolutely.
always marketing yourself for sure, especially nowadays when we have social media. You're
Absolutely.
constantly marketing yourself whenever you put anything online. And you say that you love Canva. I distinctly remember that when you were actually running for SRVP, you made state posts for every single state, and they were like the prettiest Canva things that I had ever seen. So, I mean, that you marketed yourself in a way that was, I care about every single association that I'm about to represent, and you researched every single one of those associations, and you made sure you knew what you're about to talk into. I remember that from whenever you spoke with Texas DECA, and I said, "Wow, she knows what Texas DECA is about." And so, being well researched and well informed in those venues, I think, is the best way to be able to provide credibility in yourself and to show others that you're about to lead. That I'm about to try to make my best impression and make sure that I can help you.
Absolutely, to serve the people that you're looking to advocate for. Because if you're not serving, then what's the point in leadership?
So, with that being said, what is it like being an executive officer? And you can also talk about how it was like to be an association officer, and how did you manage your time? Because, especially in this position, you were traveling quite a bit, you're managing school, and I'm sure that you've had a lot of people that have been able to help you with organizing your time, but it's definitely hard too when you're traveling all the time and working to advocate for members.
Absolutely. So I want to make sure I answer all of the pieces of your question. So if I miss any, feel free to jump in. So there is quite a difference between association office and executive office. So as an association officer working on the state level for the state of Tennessee, we really focused on direct member engagement. In executive office, it's a little bit different because I don't have the opportunity to directly impact every single one of the 225,000 DECA members that are all across the world, representing 19 associations of DECA. It makes it a little bit more challenging. So instead, my goal is always to advocate for the association teams and the district teams like you're on, and allow you guys to have the opportunities to experience everything that I'm experiencing and have all of the information so that you can have that direct impact. So it's less of a direct to members and more of a direct to associations so that we can work as a team to put it all together. I think that's the biggest way to adequately manage time, is to remember that this is not a solo endeavor by any means. Working with the other executive officers, working with the association teams. If I tried to do it by myself, it wouldn't work, plain and simple. So instead, we have the One DECA calls, and we have the Southern Region calls and the President's Council calls, where there are action steps for everyone to take on their own role so that all of the 225,000 DECA members know that they are adequately being served and that someone is there to genuinely work for them. So I think that that's the best way to describe the difference between the association and executive office. I have loved both, and they are completely different kinds of love. And it's interesting to understand how you serve as a leader and then which one is the better fit for your own personal leadership style. So I think that that's an interesting question to ask anyone who's ever served an executive office or is looking to serve an executive office, is how do you serve as a leader? For me, it's always been impact driven. So it's different kinds of impact in each place. You mentioned going to school. So I'm a senior in high school and serving in office. The difference between serving an association and executive office has definitely been the amount of time I spend away from the school building, being in different places, less of being in chapters down the road and more of being and associations across the country. I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it definitely is back to that teamwork thing where I rely on my support system. My teachers at school are phenomenal. My parents really make sure that they're putting their best foot forward so that I can do the same. We're relying on my family, my friends, the association officers to make sure we get all of the things done that needs to be done. I could never try and do it by myself, so I'll never claim to do it by myself, but that's definitely where my mind is at 100% of the time.
Absolutely. And I think that it's important to realize that you have a support system. I think sometimes we try to spearhead everything by ourselves, but rely on the people next to you for sure. So next up, you discussed briefly the events that you compete in. So in terms of kind of the general area that you competed in, what are some of your accolades in those events, and also just some big broad tips regarding competing and all of those different things?
Oh, absolutely. First tip that comes to mind before I even go into anything that I've done is don't try to be something that you're not. So if you are more of an introverted person and you want to be on the more soft-spoken side, or you want to have more of a personal connection instead of an out loud connection, then use that to your advantage. If you are a really outgoing extrovert that wants everybody in the room to know that you're rocking it, great, go with that instead. But wherever you're at on that spectrum of presentation styles and personality styles, then stick with that, because trying to be something that you're not in an interview is going to come across every time. I started with competing in Principles of Hospitality and Tourism, which is a role play, and I absolutely loved that. My freshman year, I placed first in Tennessee in that, and then I competed at ICDC. My second year, I competed in Professional Selling. I placed first in Tennessee, and then I competed at ICDC. And then this past year, I competed in Project Management Career Development, placed first in the state, and then competed at ICDC. Each one of those is very different. It allowed me to see a different side of business and marketing, but each one was very unique, and I really enjoyed all of my time competing.
Mm-hmm. So absolutely. I think that a lot of times whenever I know for a fact that when we started the idea of doing startup business plan, it was hard. In the presentation component, I think is really where that happens for written events, at least, where you can sometimes fake it too much or try to be something that you're not. And that was where we had to take a step back and say, okay, what's the goal of our presentation here? Why are we doing it? And I think your why is the biggest thing in any competition event. Whether now it's easy to say for something in entrepreneurship to say, why are you creating this business? Why is this product important? But even for a role play, professional selling, I have friends who've competed in that as well. And the biggest response is, why does the judge care? Point blank period. Why am I listening to you talk about this presentation? And I mean, there's a truth that at different levels of competition, there's different types of judges for sure. But every single judge at the end of the day is going to look at you and say, why am I listening to you? And why should I care? So something there needs to answer that, but engage them. And utilizing the skills that you already have to engage them is better than faking it and pulling away from a presentation that might have so much, but you're covering it up with something that's not truthful. So I think that is 100% true. And it's something that I've seen so many times go wrong in presentations that I'm judging. And it's just a critique that I'll write on a Google Doc and I'll say, be personable with it, make it conversational, and tell me your why. And there's no reason why you won't do well. So
I should be taking the competition tips from you, Miss First Place at ICDC. You're the real expert here.
Sometimes I don't understand how it happens, but
no. You earned that one. You'll take it all day.
Oh, but I did say this actually at Power Trip. I told you, Russ, and Danielle this, that I met you guys for the first time backstage after we won glass, and I didn't remember. I remembered a few days before Power Trip. I was like, wait a second, this happened before anything this year. So it was kind of funny. I was kind of like, oh, they had just gotten elected, so they were probably emotional. And then all of a sudden they're hugging people holding trophies in their hand. So
that moment was incredible for everyone involved. Absolutely.
So the next one is probably my favorite question, which is your funniest moment in DECA. So funniest moments to me exists in every single aspect, because I think they happen more when you're with a team of some sort, and on trips, something always goes wrong. So share your funniest DECA moment and something that just had you on the floor laughing.
Oh my goodness. So, the thing that I find hysterical that continues to come up over and over and over again, and I always laugh in my head whenever it does. Are you familiar with the TV series called Inventing Anna?
I've seen the promos, but I haven't watched it.
So, Inventing Anna is about, it's a true story, and it was about a young lady who's a con artist, and she infiltrated her way into real high society in New York City. And it's a tragic story because she stole a lot of things, but it makes me laugh every time I hear about the show or anytime somebody brings up the membership campaign video, because a lot of the lines in the membership campaign video are lines where we were reenacting the show when we were on set filming the membership campaign video. I believe it's Ross when he says, "Don't be basic, join
Right.
DECA." All of those lines where you're like, that's really funny. I wonder how they came up with that. Those are all spin-offs from where we were just having fun reenacting the show, Inventing Anna, because those are things that she says. And while we were filming it, I was so worried because she has a really thick, really fake accent in the show. And I had said several of the lines that are in the membership campaign video in the really thick accent. And the first time that somebody told me, they were like, "Have you seen it? It's out." And Ross texted and he was like, "They used the lines that we were just messing around with." And I thought that they had put me faking this really thick accent in the video. And I was really nervous for a couple minutes. And then I watched it and it's a whole lot of fun. So that's definitely an insider funny moment
That's
that
really
every time you see it, you're going to know. And if you
yeah.
ever watch the show, you're going to say, "Oh my goodness, that's
But
what
we
I thought."
already call those lines iconic. I think that like in DECA at this point, just the membership video has become an iconic thing that we just look back on. I mean, the bet at the very end, Hadley. So we can't even act like it's not iconic at this point. Like every person has it memorized. You already know. I've seen it 10 times. So knowing where those lines came from definitely makes it even more iconic, I would say. But I'm still going to contribute it to your guys' creativity and not to the
It is. It takes creativity to connect
I
DECA
think so.
to
I think so.
a Netflix spinoff series.
That's really funny. Okay, so the final question is, what is your biggest piece of advice in general for DECA members? So in any level, in any capacity, one thing that you want to leave with everyone listening today.
Go for it. No matter what you're doing or what you're thinking about doing, if the question is ever in your mind, should I go for this leadership position, or should I go to this event? Should I put myself out there? Should I try this competition? Go for it. You're only going to ever regret not doing something. You're never going to regret doing it. And in my DECA experience, I can confidently say that every opportunity that's come up, I have gone for it. And that's what I'm most proud of anything else. And the students that I see have the most fun and the most success in DECA can say that same thing. So go for it every single time.
I agree with that like wholeheartedly, 100%. There's nothing more I can even add to that because it's so true. So with that being said, perfect way to end off this lovely episode of Spotlights with Sarah. So thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you, Hadley, for joining me. And I will see you guys in the next one.